Backseat Drivers time.
Good evening and welcome to Backseat Drivers number 3 of 2024. Normal programming resumes this week. Thank God, Max had a win.
Thank goodness Max had a win.
It was getting a bit of a concern there. He hadn't won for a week. So, But periods of domination like this are not good for the sport, according to Toto and Lulu. So,
basically, we've got different winners now. Two.
Yeah. That's winners. It. Jobless Carlos. I reckon he's got a few offers though, just quietly.
100%. He has already spoken to multiple teams, and I reckon he's probably even spoken to Sauber. He's like, what have you got for me? I'm not taking the job. I just want my confidence up just to know that I am needed.
Well, that's actually not as silly as, because that was the rumor probably at the start that they were courting him anyway, because that'll be Audi in 26. So to get him in there early.
I guess you could go for a smaller team and be the biggest fish.
Yeah. But I think he's probably got a good chance of ending up at Red Bull. If you really want to go to Mercedes, I'd probably take my chances with Sauber over going to Mercedes at the moment.
I haven't noticed it, but Dave, you would have seen it over the course of, say, 20 years. Or, however long Mercedes have been around for. Are they the kind of team that rests on their laurels and then has this years of just, oh man, we're never going to catch up? Or do you think Toto's in the background and he's like, don't worry about, when Lewis is gone, everything will be better. You know what? We're better off without him because we have supercar. Because I have a plan. I've genetically made an Adrian Newey in my backyard. He's going to come along. The good times are going to roll again.
I think the issue with this team, which we've seen it before with other teams, because really Mercedes has kind of only been going since 2011, and after they took over Braun, which was a fairly kind of clean sheet at that point because of the way Braun had kind of ran itself down in 2010. Was it 2009? Anyway. So I think the issue that they've had is that they had a super team essentially at the start of 2014 that has gradually dwindled as we've gone through. And now you've lost a lot of those. Say like with Red Bull, when they've lost certain key people, they haven't lost many key people over the last few kind of, or even, over most of their time, they've gradually built up. But even when they've lost key people, they've been able to, build up from within. Whereas I think Mercedes probably hasn't been able to do that building up from within. Plus, they're at that point now where they have lost quite a few key people.
And you can't attract people in on that. A couple of years ago, you'd be able to attract people because you'd be like, we win everything. You work for us.
Yeah, but I think as well that maybe they have struggled a little bit to attract outside top line people because there isn't that challenge going there. So for, say, someone like Adrian Newey, going to Mercedes, 3 years ago when they still had the best car, it's not really a challenge for him. So, you're not attracting people like that. Whereas, say, even Ferrari, probably at the moment, it's not a great one for that, but they've always got the lure of going to Ferrari.
But
Ferrari, say, James Vowles trying to attract people at the moment, there would be some kind of, there would be a bit of attraction there of, to bring Williams back, or say going even to Sauber when they become Audi, and then you're part of the Audi Works program from the ground up. Whereas there probably isn't, say, that attraction to go to Mercedes.
How long do you reckon Williams will be? I don't want to say garbage, but not great.
Oh, I mean, we've got Alpine here that are making Williams look great. So,
well, I reckon I could get a job at Alpine or Williams just as the what is it? The inventory guy. As long as I know anything better than Excel, I'm.
Yeah, well, I'm not. Alpine seems to have their own issues. they've probably got a bit better inventory system, but they're just not very good with it.
Do we think China will have 19 cars?
No, they'll get that car back. So
do you think
be fine?
James will be on chassis watch though, and he's told both his drivers, if it looks like you're going to crash, slam on the brakes. We've put in a secret handbrake, and you're just going to do we'd rather you crash into dirt than into a tire or, Mr. Ricardo.
I think China will be a lot safer place for that as well. Like, you have gone to two tracks that there's probably, these two, Monaco, Canada, Baku, places like that you probably don't really want to go to when you're short on chassis. And the issue as well, you've got a lot of high speed chances of destroying stuff in Melbourne and Suzuka. Whereas even if you go to Monaco, you haven't got the same kind of speeds when you're hitting the wall.
But you've still got a very high chance of plowing.
Oh, yeah. But the risk of, if you do go off, the risk of destroying something is a lot worse at Melbourne and Suzuka. What's got me, though, is probably how easy it is to damage the chassis.
Well, aren't they just made of carbon fiber hopes and dreams now?
Yeah, but I wouldn't have thought you would have had that many times where you need a chassis swap during the season. And really, Williams would have had back-to-back weekends if where they would have swapped the chassis had they had a spare there.
Oh, so you reckon even if they had a spare chassis, they'd be like, eh. If they had a spare chassis in Melbourne, would they still have had that awkward conversation with Logan?
No, they would have built up the spare for Albon.
They would have just taken that risk and...
Yeah, because that's what the spare's there for. Unfortunately, at the moment, Logan's driving the spare chassis.
If you had the spare and James looks at it and Logan smashes it in, Alan smashes it into the wall, are you allowed to just go, you know what, I'm not risking it. Sorry, Logan, we can't have you plow it into the wall and have two broken chassis. You sit this one out. We're not using the spare because you go have a race in Japan, and we're going to send, and the other one's being FedEx back to England.
So I think it was fine to not run the car in Melbourne because you've got this force majeure clause, and obviously they had no. Whereas if there was a spare there, they would have then said, "Well, you haven't got any excuse. You can build up the spare."
So that kind of puts pressure then on the smaller team. I'm assuming all the other teams have a spare chassis, right?
Alpine doesn't.
Okay, so Alpine doesn't.
And I think Dan's new chassis is the third one for RB as well.
And how many chassis are you allowed in the year?
You're not limited to it. You can only take one spare to each race, though, I'm pretty sure now.
Okay, so if Williams keeps breaking it, besides from what I've seen, a lot of people back in England are not going to be happy that they are working over holidays, and supposedly there was a bank holiday where a lot of people were called back for some surprise work.
Yeah, I mean that's a typical thing in a race team anyway.
But I would imagine if you're working for Williams right now and your partner says, hey, we're going on a weekend adventure to my parents' house. Either you're like, I can't go. Logan's still on the team. There's a good chance he's going to plow it into a wall. Or do you go and then every so often you're like, what? Yeah, nah. I got to go. Albon's plowed it into the Australian, and in 10 hours there'll be a broken chassis that I need to repair.
Well, I suspect there's probably some overtime happening at the moment trying to get the third one ready to go as well.
Now, does that go towards the salary cap?
Yeah.
So they're going to run out pretty quickly because I'd imagine that the person who engineers a monopod, chassis is not cheap. They're not McDonald's workers, Dave. They are PhD astro mechanical bio whatever who are probably paid a substantial amount of money and a substantial amount more if they're told, hey, what are you doing Sunday afternoon? Were you watching the game? No, you're not. Come on in.
And you've also then got the double whammy in that they've had to repair the current ones as well, which is all part of the cost cap. But also, you've got to factor in too that they damaged the car in Melbourne.
Yep.
Which then you've got to get it back to Silverstone or back to. They're not Woking. They're where Williams is. Anyway, it'll come to me. You've got to get it back to England, and then get it back to Japan, and now they've then had to send one from Japan back to England, and then back to China.
They're in Grove, Oxford.
That's
China.
it. Yeah, Grove. Yeah. So that's not. It's not like we had a crash in France. We'll just drive it across the channel or whatever.
Yeah.
You've got to get it on a plane and ship it over, and none of this.
I was saying it's the worst place to have a crash because they've like F1. You can see why they've done it. They've done Melbourne, Japan, China, so you can basically just go. And most teams have done that, and now they're just relaxing. Whereas Williams have had to do 6,000 kilometers there, 6,000 kilometers back. It's broken again.
You would have paid an absolute premium, if not, say, putting it on some kind of charter. You would have paid a massive premium to get it in time.
But they're sponsored by DHL, so they must have. There has to be some sort of deal, right?
Well, Formula One or Williams?
Well, the Formula One umbrella, there must be like deals where they, ship some.
Well, I'm not sure currently, but in the Bernie era, I know if you finished within the top 10 of the championship, your travel costs were covered for the next year.
The Bernie years sound corruptly amazing.
That was part of the you were then part of the charter thing where they had all the gear going around, which I'd imagine. But to do something out of the ordinary like that, which I've dealt a little bit with air freighting stuff over the years, and it's not as simple as just like something a bit smaller you can jump on with hand luggage.
You can put it in your carry-on.
This is, and to make sure, like, apparently Albon's chassis was back in Grove on Monday morning.
Yeah, I heard that it was basically, jet pilot over there, And
Yeah.
Dave, you'd know this with bicycle frames. They basically have to X-ray it. It's the only way you can really check carbon fiber is you X-ray the. I've heard stories when I used to have friends in a bicycle shop that you take it to the airport and they would put it through the scanner and it would find out all your headline fractures.
Yeah,
It was the easiest and cheapest way of checking for damage. So I assume they're going to put it through, check for, hairline fractures and cracks and stuff, and then obviously repair it again. And
I think they'd have some equipment at the track to be able to check stuff. So they would have. They
had to check to make sure that it was broken.
Yeah, and they would have checked through and then sent over.
So have you only so the one that gets shipped back, is that the one they have to repair, or did they watch the race? Barry from manufacturing's looked at it and gone, "Oh, that's my weekend gone."
No, they fixed the one that was in Melbourne. So they
can't even have one sitting there ready.
They can, but they don't at the moment.
Oh, because they're Williams and they don't have.
So you might find that even like someone like Red Bull or Mercedes or Ferrari, they might be currently building up a fourth one.
Because they know Albon's on the warpath and he's just going to.
Well, just as and then having like a backup plan in case. Which now with the cost cap, they're not as frivolent with them. In the early kind of 2000s, where you could go and do unlimited testing and stuff, they would have had two race cars, a fully built spare at the races, probably a spare chassis at the races.
They used to have a spare car, didn't they?
Yep. They would have three full cars at the races and probably have a spare chassis, and then they'd probably have 2 test cars that were fully, like especially the top teams would have had 2 ready to go, and then they probably would have had 1 or 2 spares at the factory. So you probably find that early 2000s they probably would have been running, say, 8 chassis a year, whereas now you're probably only running 4, and then maybe if you trashed one, you might build up, say, a 5th.
So, like in Rob's perfect world, in his dreams, you've got Yuki and Dan in their cars, and then for just no apparent reason, like a Top Gear challenge, if any of the cars crashes, the spare Red Bull cash app pointing thing of Liam Lawson just comes out to scare them into driving correctly. And then if they can't make it, he tags in, and then Dan goes off and Also, right. I'm going to answer some of Rob's questions. I think Papa Stroll is finally going to have that awkward conversation with his son. I think they both know that they've both walked out of a shower and they've both seen each other naked. They just don't want to say anything about it. They know it needs to be addressed, and I reckon at the end of the year, whatever the rest of the board is, they've gone up and said, you're gonna have to let your son go. I mean, we understand that you're because he's not as a lot of people seem to forget, the F1 is entertainment and not really a sport anymore. It's purely how much money can we have, which hurts Rob's soul, because I think Dan, if Dan ever goes, they'll let him do it on his own terms. Because if they were to say, we have dropped Dan, and it was like when Dan left last time, it was his own decision. He's like, I want to go to Renault, and they're like, cool, you do that. No harm done. Yeah, you do you. And then when he wanted to go to McLaren, they're like, Dan, you keep making these mistakes and going to the wrong you jump into wrong person, but that's all right. We will still take you back. Red Bull, I think, would be a PR nightmare and marketing, landmine if they said we've gotten rid of Dan, because there are probably heaps of more fans now from Drive to Survive and fans that just like Dan driving. They don't care where he finishes. They don't care that Yuki out-qualified him by 0.2 of a second. No, Dan just drives around. Everyone loves him. He will either have been told, you want to step down. He'll be like, nah, I'm ending here. And I'm pretty sure Yuki will suffer again and he'll miss out. He's not getting a Red Bull seat. He's too unmarketable. He's not I think Dan's still popular.
Yeah.
I think Dan's even more popular now because people realize what they didn't have for Drive to Survive. And even who was it who basically said Drive to Survive creamed their pants as soon as they found out Dan was back. The show was saved. You watched the Drive to Survive special. There's meant to be half a season where Dan's not there, and they've completely forgotten about it. It's like, at the start, we did a driving. Where was Dan? Never mind. Anyway, Dan's here now, and here are 13 episodes. We've only got 12, but we've made a bonus episode called Where's Dan? There he is. Oh, there he is. And he's going to keep him there. And I reckon if he doesn't get the Red Bull seat, he will just be there with Liam Lawson to do Anzac wacky things. Making Liam eat Vegemite, and then he'll be like fighting over who owns Pavlova and kangaroos versus Kiwis in just stupid Red Bull type Instagram 10-second videos.
You've also got to remember with this that you've got other sponsors now that have signed up, and I'm fairly confident that they've signed up as part of the deal that you've got down there.
No offense, Yuki's not really a big, like, I think you've got Lewis and Max, obviously, because they're champions.
Yeah.
Alonso for the actual fans that remembered he, has won. You've got the Ferrari boys because they're Ferrari and smooth operating. Everyone loves them. And then you've got 10 drivers that could basically have their own shop to sell merchandise, and they would sell less than one Dan shop. Like Bottas is selling hilarious, Uber lifts every so often. His teammate, people forget he's there, and I think it'll be interesting to see when they do the China F1 if he gets as much attention as Yuki did in Japan. Because I reckon they'll have forgotten he's there and be like, oh, crap, I forgot he's here. Quick, everybody, get your Chinese flags out because we've got a guy that he won't score points. At least Yuki got a point for his home.
From what I heard, which I'm not sure if this is a wild rumor or actual fact, but part of Sauber signing Guan Yu was the idea was to get Chinese sponsorship on board. Apparently, they've actually got more interest from American companies that want to deal in China than what they have from Chinese companies. Because the American companies are like, well, we'll sponsor the team. We'll use him as, the front of our sponsorship. Yeah, and then the Chinese will be like, oh, they sponsor our child. But apparently...
Only one child, no two children, it's just one.
Yeah, but apparently he hasn't moved the needle at all in China.
I think there's a lot... And I'm sure Logan, they had plans for Logan to be Mr. America, which is why I still think you need to let Andretti in, because even people like me know Mario Andretti is American racing. Like he's the Dan Ricciardo of F1 to people who don't know F1. If you want to support an American that you're like, I've heard of this name before. He's American. Pew pew.
The big issue though, and I mean it happens here as well, but America's even more kind of insular in that someone like Logan Sargent had to go. If you want to go and do F1, you have to go and do F3, F2, etc.
Yeah.
America does not care what the hell's going. They care about Formula One, but anything below. So all of a sudden, this name, who's Logan Sargent?
Yeah. Well, they care about Formula One because Formula One is the super big race.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But it's
F2.
Yeah. So nearly to move the needle in America on that front, you nearly need to get a NASCAR driver. As ridiculous as it sounds. Yeah.
But you get an Andretti name. And so people in America, if people, I'm assuming, again, if an American saw Andretti racing for F1, they would support it blindly. Even if it was two drivers from, Mexico and Canada, they'd be like, close enough, it's an American team. Like if
But if you got someone like Pato Award or Colton Herta that are like their names in America.
Yeah.
Which Pato, like Colton's American, but Pato's Mexican.
Well, obviously Stingray, because Stingray's a good American name.
Did you look into the investment thing for Stingray?
I had a look what you showed me, and it seems like the most like disjointed type of thing. Like anytime I see like an F1 driver or a race car driver saying like, I need money or I've faced adversity, I kind of feel like they're missing the point. It's like when little Stroll and his dad basically said he overcame adversity because he broke his leg mountain bike riding in Switzerland with his rich mates, got flown to a hospital, and then that weekend drove in F1. If you're a race car driver, like an Indy driver, and you're like, can I have money, please? It's like years ago, what's his name? The kid from Scrubs. He's like, I need money to make my movie. And everyone's like, don't you already have a lot of money? He's like, I would like money for my movie. It just seems weird that you can invest in something that,
It's a thing that has been used many times before, and some people have done it quite successfully. What my issue with it was, like, it wasn't very clear, and it was like, minimum $200. If you put in $1,000, you got a hat. I think it was like if you got $5,000, you got a hat and a T-shirt or something, and then if you put in like $500,000, you got your name on the car.
$500,000 to put your name on the car is pretty good.
Yeah, but you could probably get your name on like a proper car as well for $500,000, depending on how big. But what I've found interesting, because usually with these things, as the drivers earn more money or whatever, you can get paid back. And say, like, I know Justin Wilson did it to get into F1. Will Davison had done it, and then he actually paid everyone back rather than, say, having a wage. He, when he signed with HRT, he basically turned around and said, hey, I'm getting this big paycheck. Can I kind of give you all a lump sum now and call it quits? But Stingray's never going to earn anything. So you're essentially donating money.
It's basically if Nicholas Latifi said, can you give me $1,000? I'll give you $10,000 for every point I score in the next 3 races. And you're like, well, that money's as good as gone.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, normally you would say like if, which I'm not sure if Kimi Antonelli comes from money or whatever, but say like he was, short on funds or whatever to do his F2 racing this year, and you bought shares in him and the hope that he lands a $20 million contract at some point in his Formula One career, and then you get dividend paid out of that kind of thing. Yeah. Like, you can understand because this kid's going places. Unfortunately, Stingray Rob.
He's not.
Yeah, he'll do a few seasons of IndyCar while the money's there, while the churchgoers are funding. Pray.com, get on it. whatever the hell.
Thoughtsandprayers.com/Stingray.
Stingray Rob.
Do you think the name Rob's just just a name of a person that really can't commit to, once a week doing a race or once a week doing some sort of task once a week?
Yeah.
It's
a bit of a disappointing name, isn't it?
Yeah.
At least he's got 2 B's, unlike Single B Rob.
Single B Rob probably gave away his other B just not to be here.
Yeah.
Traded it in for some magic beans. So I have a question for you, Dave. I was sitting around reading the internets on the Insta, Face, Twitters, whatever. Now, I saw a photo. Was there a car in 1998 that was sponsored by Red Bull, or does that not time work?
Yeah.
But when did
Sauber.
I thought Red Bull actually sponsored a...
Yeah, Red Bull was sponsoring Sauber in 98.
Ah.
So, yeah, I'm trying to think, because they had a personal deal with Gerhard Berger quite early on, like I think it was 86 or something. And then the first team I think they sponsored was Sauber. And I think they actually had shares in Sauber at one point. They then, which I think part of the deal, because they were with Arrows at one point too, but I think that was also because Enrique Benaldi was racing, which was the Red Bull Junior. And then they went into buying Jaguar.
I've also had a question from the internet. I've been told to ask you about Team Australia. Who are Team Australia, and why would I care about Team Australia?
Yeah, because there was a Team Australia that ran in Champ Car, but then I suppose there was also the A1GP Team Australia. Or are we just talking about like Team Australia as in Dan and Oscar?
I'm going to go with Team Australia, and I want to expand that because next year it's going to be Team Anzac. So it'll be Dan, Liam, and Oscar.
Do you think Rob will cry when Dan's still on the grid next year?
I think if Dan races in Miami and to a greater extent Vegas again, someone's going to have to go and watch Rob. Like he's going to be on strict, just like
suicide watch.
Just keep him happy, because I feel that what's going to happen is we haven't heard much about the Red Bull Civil War anymore, but I feel like Yuki doesn't have enough pull, sponsor happiness or whatever, and they've obviously promised what's his name, Liam, a seat, so they clearly know one of them's going. Visa's probably told them, we want Dan there. We will give you money if Dan's still there next year. And Red Bull's like, it's not like us to screw over young drivers. We don't do that ever. So this will be new to us. Yeah. They'll get rid of him. Liam will come in, and it'll be one of those awkward conversations where they're like, all right, Liam, you sit here now. Where's Yuki? Don't worry where Yuki is. You worry about your own seat. And then Dan will be in the corner there drinking a coffee with a big shit-eating grin, knowing I survived again. And then Checo's going to be awkwardly sitting there going, oh, I'm next. I'm in danger. And he'll go.
Yeah, well, that's if Checo's there anyway, depending on what happens with Sainz. But even, people are talking about Checo's great drive. He only just beat Sainz. And we don't know.
Have to minimum finish second. Like he's in the car.
Yeah. And we don't know how much Max is pushing.
He's not.
Yeah.
You can tell right now he's still in side quest mode. And I don't think even when the car caught on fire, he probably thought to himself, I'll just push it a little bit, in Japan. And then he's like, I'm still fucking great. I'll just stick to this casual driving nonsense. Yeah. And he's not, I don't think he's going to get challenged for a while. I think, like you said, there are set positions for all the teams. And if anyone falters, like Max in an engine, then Ferrari can take their spot. Or Checo should have taken the win in Melbourne. Yeah. And missed his chance. Because I mean, this would be great if I cursed him. I can't see Max not finishing a race again this season. I certainly hope that soundbite comes back to bite me in the butt. That'd be the greatest thing ever. I can't see Max, George, and Blessed all crashing out in the same race. It'd be absolutely glorious if just somehow the front six drivers, so all Mercedes, all Ferrari, and all Red Bull just collide, and then for somehow just to make Rob even angrier, Dan just drives underneath it like it's a when you get to a certain milestone in sport. Yeah, just like you drive under and then Dan finishes. I feel like Dan will get one very good finish. He won't get a podium, but he'll get like 5 or 6, and everyone will remember that. And then poor Yuki, who's probably going to get like 9, 10 places, it still won't be as many points as the one good race Dan had. And then you'll have fans like Rob cracking it because, Yuki's been consistent. But at the end of the day, Dan's the one that got them from like 7th to 5th. And he'll have done it he did it last year. He'll do it again this year. And then Rob will have to wear a hat that says, I love Dan. Because I'll make it for him.
Yeah. I've only got one problem with your theory there.
Yep.
You said the top 6 and then included the 2 Mercedes.
For this one, for my laugh, it kind of, I snuck them in there because it should have been McLaren, but I want them safely in the back. I want them to have had like a bad, qualifying, so they just miss out.
Piastri wins while Norris gets second.
I would love to see Piastri win like a race again, just to have Lando constantly reminded. And I hope that Zach has got the same deal with his drivers, that he has 2 tattoos, one on either arm, of just Dan and Oscar to remind him that he makes stupid bets. Yep, I think that's what's he's it.
The only thing with that is that I think Lawson's been promised a seat next year. So that's the only hard thing.
Have they said where? Like, have they said where his seat is? They just said, we promise you a seat. We don't know where.
Roberto Moreno. When is a car not a car? Yeah. You've signed a contract that says something about driving having a chassis at the Grand Prix. There is your chassis. Sure, it has no wheels, right? Wheels, engine, wings, anything.
Nope. Yeah, I reckon Papa Stroll's going to have an awkward conversation. He's going to be like, "This is my son now. His name is Yuki." It's like, "What about me, Dad?" He goes, "I don't know. Go hang out with your sister and her snowboarding husband. I don't care anymore. You've wasted me many, many dollars." I think that. Do you reckon he just loves his son a lot, or just, he has sort of like, I just need to get my son out of the house. He's got no other skills. I've invested so much money in him.
Yeah, I've sunk so much cost into this. I won't admit that I was wrong. Yeah, because we're too deep.
Well, it must. of those like worst kept secrets that everyone like. You get the new kid starting, and he'd go up and go, "Why is Lance still here?" He goes, "Why don't you go ask the boss why his son's still in the team?" Anyway, I'll see you later. I want to keep my job, so I'm going to go join Team Fernando and Alonso because those two are great. I can ask them questions like, "What was it like to win a race?" or "What's it like to get podiums more than like once or twice?" Oh, also, with that test drive in Japan, Dave, you know what I think what Red Bull did just to create, I'd like to call Drive to Survive tension? They were always going to let him be the, free practice F2 driver guy in Japan. They just made it sound like, oh no, Dan had a crash. Maybe we're replacing him. No, they're not. They'll never replace him.
It was always planned that he would do the free practice in Japan, and it was always planned that you can't take Yuki out of free practice in Japan. So it was always going to be Dan no matter what.
But the way they I like to call my favorite sporting and news website news.com. They made it sound like, oh, Dan's position, he's lost his seat for free practice. And you look at the person that's writing the article, I'm like, you know less than me, and the bar's not been set very high. You're in trouble if I know you're just making up clickbait articles. When I was like, almost Dan, Rob would look at it and go, even I could write better than
you get AI chatbot writing better than
One must look at the race today to see that Dan got hit by a car. How many points has Logan had in the last 3 years? Just out of curiosity.
Did he end up scoring one last year?
I think he's had have he got double-digit points?
No.
You reckon he's got single-digit points? Oh no! Why is he's got? How many points has he got?
He got one.
He's got 1 point in what? A year and a bit?
Yeah. Liam Lawson got 2 last year.
See, and how many have Dan got?
Dan got 6 last year.
Now, Dave, just you were the ex-accountant. Follow with me here, right? So, Sargent got 1, right? And then Liam Lawson got 2, so that's 3.
He's got 0.
Okay, so we add that to the total. That's still 3.
Yeah.
And then Dan got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. 6 is bigger than 3, right? And that's over 4 drivers. Okay. I thought my math was correct. I thought I'd just, think out loud for you and for Rob. Because I don't understand what Sargent does. So he got a point in America.
Hey.
Wait a minute. Lawson to get points before Dan, and Lawson doesn't have a seat in T1, F1.
Yeah.
Sounds like Rob's making a lot of crazy bets.
Yeah.
So Rob, I think what Rob wants to see, Yuki breaks his arm or injures himself. Lawson's quickly, helmet runs up to, no, he doesn't run, casually just walks up to Liam and just goes, "You ready? Go." Then those two have a race, and then what Rob wants to see is Liam basically win the entire race, prove that he is the number one dominant driver of everybody. Max gets out, kisses his shoe, and goes, you should always be in the Red Bull car. Rob was right all along. Also, how does a Dutch man like me, 3-time world champion, know Rob? I know Rob all the time. Rob told me stuff on Twitter. How many points do you think Daniel Ricciardo has?
It'd be 300-400.
like over his entire life.
Yeah. And possibly
It's
more.
1,300 points. He's like the 8th most highest scoring points person in F1
Ever.
Like, obviously, there's some big names there, and we don't care about those. And then
Yeah.
Rob's going to be like, oh, but other drivers didn't get as many points. Doesn't matter, Rob. It's not their fault that they didn't drive at the right time. Dan's done nothing wrong. I feel like this hatred towards Dan is unwarranted.
Actually, I was just F1 winners.
Dan's won 8.
Yeah, which that would actually put him relatively.
Of the current drivers, that would put him in the top 5?
You'd only have Fernando, Lewis, and Max with more.
And what about? Oh no, and there'd be.
Bottas had 10.
Okay, and what about one of the Ferrari boys? Didn't they have a few? Have they had a few wins?
Not that many. Sainz had 3, and Leclerc's had 5.
Dave, let's be generous then. How many podiums did Yuki get last year? And the year before that? Yuki. He's a little guy. He's about 8
I don't think he's had any podiums ever.
Dan's was Dan fired from Renault?
No.
Was he fired from Red Bull originally?
No.
Was he cruelly taken out by a large American man from McLaren to sign another Australian?
He wasn't fired. They paid him out, McLaren.
So it sounds like redundancy. That sounds like a redundancy.
Yeah.
It sounds like Dan got himself a nice bit of Western Australian tour around the world money. Where's
So Dan's equal 37th on the winners list.
On the winners list, that's pretty impressive.
On the amount of wins. So he's Mr. Mark Webber has one more win than him.
He's got 2. He's 2 more, doesn't he? He's got 10. I think.
No, Webber's got 9.
9 wins.
But Bottas has 10. So once Ricciardo gets that Red Bull seat and takes a few more.
The only
Checo's actually had 6 wins. Yeah.
Also, in how many seasons do you think it took Dan to get his first win? Like full seasons?
What did he do? 3 years at Toro Rosso, so would have been in his 4th.
Actually, 2014 he got his first win, and that was their 3rd full season.
Oh, so he only did 2 years at Toro Rosso.
He did. Oh no, he did. He was a test driver.
Yeah, he did the year at Hispania, and then
Hispania. Yep.
Yeah.
And then the Holden Racing Team, Formula One team, as that's what it's gonna. And then,
Where's Checo driving, Rob?
He'll have a seat. He didn't say in an F1 car. He'll be like Fernando Alonso in a seat just watching the cars drive around and go, kids, that used to be me. And they're like, what are you talking about, Grandpa? I used to drive a F1 car.
Max is already 3rd on the winners list.
3rd? What, Lewis and Schumacher?
Yeah. Yeah, Max is ahead of Vettel already, Prost, Senna.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
He might keep his seat next year.
Yeah, I reckon. if he decides to hang around.
Well, that's true.
I reckon there's
I think did Rob didn't send them to me, but did Rob send his predictions for the F1 in China? Because Booby sent them to me. And I thought Boobies.
That's next week, isn't it? We haven't got any racing this weekend, have we?
Don't we have any racing this week?
No, I'm pretty sure we got a weekend gap.
Oh well, Rob wanted to put his guesses in even earlier.
Oh well, let's know what they are.
Well, Rob obviously is Yuki to win because
Yeah.
and Dan obviously will get second because he's the F12. Boobies telling us an F12, Dave, like
Ooh.
on your keyboard. There's a new a new racing series from Donald Trump.
And in about 15 weeks, we get to watch another IndyCar race.
Why don't IndyCar follow the F1 rule of like 3 races a week?
Reasons. They don't want to flood the market. Yeah.
You want to keep people keen.
What's funny though is IndyCar, a new team announced the Prema is going to join IndyCar next year.
Okay,
they've already announced
57 teams.
Yeah, so they've got 27 full-time cars this year. So that's with everyone this year at the moment is intending to continue next year. So that's 29 full-time cars. Yes. And there's a few other people. Apparently, one of the current teams is looking to put on an extra car next year. I'm not sure who.
Can you do that in IndyCar? Can you just so? Where's the F1 are like, we don't want another team. I mean, how cool would it be if Red Bull just decided we're going to have a third seat? Why? I don't know, because we can. Yeah. It just seems like a fun thing to do.
So at the moment in IndyCar, Ganassi running 5 cars. McLaren, Penske, and Andretti are all running 3. There's potential that McLaren might go to 4 next year as well. Rahul's running 3 as well.
Now, are you doing that because you, like, if I was, McLaren, I'm assuming you're doing that because your team is very good and you kind of think most of them will finish in the top points?
So you've got, there's a few different, so McLaren are looking to expand. They currently didn't this year because their factory can only take 3 cars. They're really stretched. They are actually moving into the old Andretti factory at some point this year, so that we'll have the room.
Move into a factory in England? Is that?
Yeah, but Andretti have also got their new factory in America that they're moving into. But so as this year, McLaren are actually sponsoring another team's car, the Grosjean car, because they have too many sponsors. So they've actually they're doing a partnership with Junkos. They're essentially sponsoring the Grosjean's car because they can't physically run a 4th car themselves at the moment, but they have enough sponsors for 4 cars. And see, Ganassi went to a 5th car this year because a Cayman Islands family came along with the biggest fucking bag of money and went, we would like you to run my son in your team.
They've low and strolled it. They're just like, my boy needs to get out of the house.
So, they're essentially sponsoring, they're essentially paying for the son's car and one of the other cars in the team as part of the deal.
Is one of them also a world champion that's paid to just be really nice to him and tell the son that he's like, good turn 1 work there?
Not quite, but they do have 4 other drivers in the team.
And is it all the 4 other drivers good in their own right? And they sort of just go, why is Lance? I mean, the other driver here. And they're like, shut up, he's really good.
Yeah.
And then when they ask him questions like, are you all right? He says, I'm in the fucking wall. And then they turn it into a dance remix. I feel like they're going to keep Stroll there purely for hilarious radio chatter, because Yuki seems to have calmed down a bit. So he's, not worth it. George Russell is still a whingy little man who points out everything. Oh, good to know Scooter's here. Good news, Dave. I checked. Logan Sargent didn't finish in the points, so E-Scooter gets no hat. Them's the rules. Yeah. So, I don't make the rules. That's what E-Scooter told me. Logan is finishing in the points. I said I would buy a hat. Logan, surprisingly, didn't finish in the points.
I'm shocked.
I'm absolutely amazed that Logan, they call him Logan Mr. Point Sergeant, who turns up and he just gets points. I mean, I think Vin Diesel summed it up quite well. It doesn't matter if it's an inch or a mile. You never had your car.
I think we've just about covered off everything for this week. Considering we had no notes.
I mean, we did all right. We've covered everything. I'm gonna bring back the board next week because I have the cork board with my driver line of 2025.
That'd be good.
The quick rundown. Dave and I spoke very and intelligently about all manner of F1 things, and nothing ridiculous was said. Also, Rob said he's been turned around and he realizes Dan is great for the sport, and he wishes him nothing but success in the coming years when he keeps his seat and turns up in Miami dressed as one of the guys from Miami Vice. That's about it. Sounds about right, Dave?
Yeah, I think that covers up everything. Yeah. Yes, very intelligently.
Very, very intelligently. Yeah. Liam will get a seat. I think
Liam's taking Yuki's seat. We've discussed that earlier.
Liam's getting a seat. I think Red Bull just knows there's going to be a massive fire sale at the end of the year, and they can just go up to one team and go, look, we'll give you some money. Just give him a seat. Just kick off. Who's this guy? Oh, you missed a lot. 58 minutes of absolute gold.
Yeah. On another channel.
Now, if you want, I can start again and just repeat it. We can do another hour.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week to do a preview of China.
Get ready. Everyone get your get ready for Dan's first points of the season. Just strap in. It's happening.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you all then.
See you all.
Good night.
No E-Scooter news. They are looking to put it in. I'll bring a report next week. I promise. E-Scooter news next week.
We can't wait.
1 hour. E-Scooter. Non-stop E-Scooter news. I'm taking over the channel. Backseat scooters. That's the new name.
Yeah, I think that might be after 9 o'clock.
That's the 11:30 show. It gets questionable.
We'll see you next week, everyone.
See you all.
Bye.